My name is Adrienne Cole, and I was 34 years old when my family replaced me in every wedding photo. Not cropped me out of one picture. Not chose an angle where I was hidden. Replaced me. My face, my dress, my place beside my father, my hands helping my sister hold her train, even the photo where I was wiping frosting off my niece's sleeve in the corner of the reception hall. Gone. In my place was Macy Rourke, my sister's best friend, smiling like she had been born into the spot I had spent my whole life trying to earn. My mother called me 2 weeks after the wedding and said, "Try to understand, Adrienne. Wedding albums are about how a family wants to be remembered." Then the photographer sent me the original gallery, 872 unedited images, every timestamp, every candid, every formal portrait they had erased me from. And attached to the gallery was an invoice for $18,450 in advanced retouching, face replacement, and album reconstruction. Billed to me, because I was the one who had signed the photography contract when my mother said she needed my organized brain to save my sister's wedding. They thought the edited album would become the family story. They thought I would stay quiet because I always did when the room got pretty enough. What they did not know was that I restore photographs for a living. And by the time we sat in the photographer's studio with my parents, my sister, Macy, the groom's mother, and the original gallery projected on the wall, my mother would hear one sentence she could not edit out. "You did not just erase me, you charged me for the removal." Before I tell you what happened next, welcome back to Hush and Tell Stories. If you have ever been used behind the scenes and erased from the picture when it was time to smile, this story is for you. Tell me in the comments who tried to rewrite your place in the family, and subscribe if quiet proof is the kind of ending you understand. I grew up in Fairhope, Alabama, in a white house with blue shutters, a magnolia tree in the front yard, and a mother who believed a family photograph could be more important than the family itself. My father, Lionel Cole, ran a small marine repair shop near the bay. He was good with engines, patient with strangers, and strangely quiet at home whenever my mother decided what the truth should look like. He could rebuild a boat motor from memory, but he could not push back against my mother's disappointment without looking like a child caught in church. My mother, Celia, was the family curator. That was how she saw herself. She arranged mantle pictures by height and color. She chose holiday outfits months in advance. She corrected posture before she corrected cruelty. She believed a good photograph could smooth over almost anything: debt, silence, favoritism, divorce, illness, embarrassment. If something ugly happened in our family, my mother did not ask why. She asked whether anyone had posted about it. My younger sister, Brenna, was 4 years behind me and beautiful in the easy, social way my mother understood. She had soft blonde hair, wide blue eyes, and the gift of looking hurt before anyone accused her of anything. In family pictures, Brenna was always centered. In family stories, she was always protected. I was useful. I was the girl holding the reflector, adjusting the collar, wiping the lipstick from Brenna's teeth, carrying the extra shoes, remembering the safety pins, paying the deposit, and standing slightly to the side because my mother said, "Just lean out a little. You're blocking the light." When I was 8, I ruined a family Christmas card by blinking. My mother made everyone stand in the front yard again, in sweaters that itched, while she fixed my hair and said, "Adrienne, please try to be aware of your face." My face. As if it had done something wrong by being human. At 12, I was told to stand behind Brenna because my navy dress was too dark for the composition. At 16, I took most of the pictures at Thanksgiving because Mom said I had a good eye, which meant I was not in them. At 18, when I left for college, she cried over the photo collage she made for the party, then asked me to move because I was casting a shadow on the dessert table. I learned early that in my family, being present did not mean being visible. That is probably why I became a photographic preservation specialist. I work at the Gulf Coast Heritage Museum in Mobile, restoring damaged photographs, cataloging family collections, digitizing old negatives, and preserving images that would otherwise fade into brown ghosts. I spend my days with cracked wedding portraits, water-damaged baby pictures, military snapshots, funeral cards, old church albums, and portraits where someone long dead wrote a name on the back in pencil because they understood memory needs anchors. My job is careful, quiet, detailed. I know how to read a contact sheet. I know how to spot a composite image. I know when shadows do not match, when grain is wrong, when a hand was borrowed from another frame, when a face has been softened until the person becomes less real. I believe photographs matter, not because they make families look perfect, because they prove who was there. My mother never understood that difference. To her, a photograph was not proof, it was a performance. Brenna understood performance too. She built her whole life around it. She became a wedding stylist, though most of her actual work came through other people's connections. She could make a backyard look expensive, a cake table look editorial, and a bridal shower look like it belonged in a magazine spread. She could not manage invoices, contracts, deadlines, or vendor deposits without panic. That was where I usually entered. The older sister, the organized one, the one with spreadsheets, folders, calendars, emergency kits, backup chargers, printed copies, and a credit card that somehow became convenient whenever beauty needed structure. I helped because I loved her. That is the truth people like my mother use against you. You do not begin by being foolish. You begin by caring. When Brenna got engaged to Preston Vale, my mother acted like our family had been invited into royalty. Preston came from old Fairhope money, not mansion money exactly, but the kind where grandparents had portraits in club halls and his mother knew which florist had taste and which had volume. He was polite, handsome, and slightly absent, like a man who had always had women organize the emotional furniture around him. His mother, Maribel V. Ale, was elegant and terrifying in the way Southern women can be when their criticism arrives wearing perfume. She called my mother dear within 5 minutes, which I understood immediately was not affection. From the beginning, my mother was determined that Brenna's wedding would prove we belonged in the Vale family photographs. Not in their hearts, in their photographs. The wedding venue was Bellwether Hall, a restored estate with live oaks, a fountain courtyard, and a ballroom where the chandeliers looked expensive enough to have opinions. Brenna wanted the full weekend package: rehearsal dinner on the lawn, ceremony under the oaks, reception in the ballroom, farewell brunch on the terrace, drone footage, film photography, monogrammed napkins, 3 dresses, and an heirloom album experience. That phrase alone should have warned me. The photographer Brenna chose was Noel Price of Lumen and Lace Photography. Noel had a studio downtown, a reputation for natural light portraits, and a contract that was 8 pages long. I liked her immediately. She was direct, calm, and organized. My mother did not like her as much. She asks too many questions, Mom said after the first consultation. That is because she is running a business. Yes, well, artists usually have a little more warmth. Noel is not the problem. Mom looked at me then, and I knew I had used the wrong sentence. In my family, naming what was not the problem was dangerously close to naming what was. The problem was money, not the public kind, the private kind. Brenna and Preston's wedding was supposed to look like the Vales had paid for elegance and the Coles had matched it gracefully. In reality, Preston's family had agreed to cover the bar, rehearsal dinner, and part of the venue. My parents promised to cover photography, flowers, rentals, and planning expenses. Brenna kept adding. My father kept saying yes. My mother kept saying, "We will make it work." Making it work usually meant calling me. The first call came 6 months before the wedding. "Adrienne, sweetheart, could you review the photographer's contract? Your sister is overwhelmed." I reviewed it. Then Mom asked if I could pay the $4,200 deposit just until Dad moves money from the shop account. I paid it. Then came the florist retainer, $3,800. The custom album upgrade, $2,750. The second shooter and rehearsal coverage, $1,900. A rush fee for bridal portraits Brenna forgot to schedule, $1,150. Every payment came with the same language: temporary, reimbursed, family, just this once. By the month before the wedding, I had paid $21,600 toward vendors, most of it on my card. All of it documented in a folder called Brenna Wedding Receipts, because my job had taught me that love can be generous and still keep copies. When I sent Mom a reimbursement spreadsheet, she replied with one sentence. Must you make everything feel transactional? I stared at that email for a long time. Then I saved it too. The thing about being the useful daughter is that people are very comfortable using you until you ask them to acknowledge the use. Brenna was not cruel all the time. That made it harder. She sent me voice notes crying about seating charts. She asked whether peonies looked emotionally soft or too round. She called me at midnight because the welcome bags had the wrong ribbon. She told me I was the only person who understood how stressed she was. Then, in public, she called Macy Rourke her real maid of honor. Macy had been Brenna's best friend since college. She was polished, wealthy, and thin in the way my mother considered photographic. She wore linen sets called Everyone Babe and had a laugh that made rooms turn toward her. Her parents owned a boutique hotel on the bay. She had never once cleaned up after Brenna's panic, paid a vendor, or sat on the phone with Mom while Dad's card declined. But she looked beautiful in champagne satin. That was enough. I was listed as a bridesmaid, technically, but I was also the emergency contact for vendors, transportation coordinator, payment backup, family problem solver, and the person everyone came to when something was missing. Macy got the pearl earrings. I got the 3-ring binder. At the bridal luncheon, my mother seated me at the end of the table near the kitchen door because, she said, you may need to step out if the rentals call. Macy sat beside Brenna with a handwritten place card that said Sister of the Heart. I pretended not to see it. That night, Noel the photographer emailed me because she had been told I was the final approval contact for the photography timeline. I almost corrected her. Then I saw the attached schedule. Family portraits, bride with parents and sister, bride with parents, sister, and maid of honor, bride with full famille. Lie, bride with chosen family. The word sister appeared once, maid of honor appeared 5 times, chosen family appeared 3. I replied with a corrected list, including myself by name in the family portraits and moving chosen family after biological family. It was not petty. It was accurate. I was the bride's sister. My mother had not stopped me from being born just because Macy had better posture. Noel responded within 10 minutes. Thank you, Adrian. I will use this as the final list unless the bride confirms changes in writing. I did not know then how much that sentence would matter. The week before the wedding, my father came by my apartment. That was unusual. Dad hated Mobile traffic and usually asked me to come to Fairhope if he needed something. He stood in my doorway holding a paper bag from my favorite bakery. Your mother said you like those lemon things. Lemon bars. Right. He came in and sat at my kitchen table, looking too large for my small apartment and too tired for his own face. How much have you paid? He asked. I opened my laptop. $21,600 so far. He rubbed both hands over his eyes. I thought it was less. I sent Mom the spreadsheet. Your mother does not like spreadsheets. That does not make the total smaller. He almost smiled. Then he reached into his jacket and handed me a folded check. $10,000. I stared at it. Dad, I will get you the rest after the wedding. Are you sure? No. That was the most honest thing he had said about the wedding. I took the check, not because it covered enough, because he had come in person, because he looked ashamed, because daughters like me are trained to treat partial honesty like a feast. Before he left, he looked around my apartment at the framed photographs on the walls. Old images I had restored from flea markets and estate boxes. People I did not know, preserved because no one else had remembered them. You always did care about pictures, he said. Someone has to, he nodded, but I do not think he understood. The wedding day began before sunrise. I arrived at Bellwether Hall at 6:15 in the morning with coffee, garment tape, safety pins, printed vendor timelines, extra phone chargers, stain remover, a sewing kit, 2 granola bars, and a folder of payment confirmations. Macy arrived at 9:40 with iced coffee and curlers in her hair and said, "Oh my gosh, you're like the wedding FEMA." Everyone laughed. I smiled because bridesmaids are expected to be easy. Brenna looked beautiful. I will not pretend she did not. Her dress was ivory silk with tiny buttons down the back, and when she stood in the window light, even I understood why my mother had been chasing this image for a year. My sister was radiant. Nervous, selfish, lovely, fragile, and radiant. I fastened 14 of those buttons because Macy's nails were too long. Noel photographed it. Brenna glanced at me in the mirror and said, "Thank you for everything, Addie." Addie. She had not called me that in years. For 1 second, I felt like a sister instead of staff. Then my mother entered, looked at the mirror, and said, "Macy, stand closer to Brenna. That is the shot." I stepped back. Noel's camera clicked anyway. I noticed. Through the day, I noticed everything. I noticed Mom giving Noel small instructions when she thought I was busy. I noticed Macy being moved into family spaces. Macy beside Mom while Brenna put on earrings. Macy holding Dad's arm in the hallway. Macy standing near the front during family portraits. I noticed Noel glancing at me sometimes, as if checking whether I was seeing what she was seeing. After the ceremony, when the family formals began under the live oaks, Noel followed the list I had approved. "Brenna with parents," she called. Click. "Brenna with parents and Adrian." I stepped forward. Mom's smile tightened. Macy also stepped forward. Noel lowered the camera slightly. "Just family for this one." Macy laughed lightly. "I'm basically family." Noel smiled back, professional and immovable. "Of course, I have you next." Macy stepped back. I stood beside Brenna. Dad's hand touched my shoulder. For 3 seconds, I felt the weight of it. Not a hug, not an apology, but contact. Noel took the photo. Then came Brenna with parents, Adrian and Macy. Then bride with chosen family. Then full bridal party. Then extended family. In each formal shot, I stood where the photographer placed me. Sometimes beside Dad, sometimes beside Brenna. Sometimes near the edge but present. Visible. Proof. The reception blurred in the way weddings blur when you are doing more work than celebrating. I found the missing cake knife. I stopped a groomsman from taking the wrong shuttle. I paid a $680 overtime fee to the live painter when Mom's card declined, and the artist needed confirmation before continuing. I fixed Brenna's bustle twice. I found Dad's reading glasses before his toa. I sat down only long enough to eat 3 bites of cold salmon. During the father-daughter dance, Dad cried. During the maid of honor toast, Macy called Brenna the sister I chose, and the room sighed. My mother looked at me during that line, not apologetically, checking, as if waiting to see whether I would make the moment about me by having a face. I did not. I kept my face pleasant. That was my mistake for years. I thought pleasant meant strong. Sometimes pleasant is just silence in nicer shoes. At 11:50, after the sparkler exit, Brenna hugged me hard. "I know I have been a monster," she whispered. "A little." She laughed and cried against my shoulder. "I could not have done today without you." That sentence should have been enough. It almost was. Then she pulled away, saw Macy waving from the vintage getaway car, and ran to her. The official wedding gallery was supposed to arrive in 6 weeks. The edited preview arrived in 3. Brenna posted the first photo on Instagram at 8:02 on a Tuesday night. The caption said, "Still dreaming of the day we became a family." It was a family portrait under the live oaks. Brenna in the middle, Preston beside her, my parents beside Brenna, Macy beside my mother, one hand over her heart, glowing in champagne satin. I stared at the picture. I remembered standing in that exact spot. I remembered Dad's hand on my shoulder. In the posted photo, Macy stood where I had been. At first, I thought I was confused. Wedding days are chaotic. Maybe this was a different frame. Maybe Macy had stepped in for another set. Maybe I was misremembering, because wanting to belong can make memory sentimental. Then I saw Dad's hand. It was resting on Macy's shoulder, but it was positioned wrong. His thumb was at the wrong angle. The shadow fell across fabric that had a different texture from Macy's dress. The neckline around her shoulder had a faint blur, too smooth, too clean, with light that did not belong under the oak. I zoomed in. My stomach went cold. It was a composite. My father's hand had been on my shoulder. Macy's face had been placed over mine. I opened the next photo Brenna posted. Macy helping button Brenna's dress. But I had buttoned the dress. Macy holding the emergency kit. But I had packed it. Macy standing between my parents in the family portrait. Macy sitting beside Brenna during the first look with Mom. Macy laughing in the corner while the bridesmaids toasted. My hair was gone. My navy dress was gone. My hands were sometimes still there if you knew how to look. In one image, the bracelet I always wore was visible on Macy's wrist because whoever edited the picture had forgotten to replace it. My phone rang. Mom, I answered without speaking. Adrian, she said, careful and soft, I need you not to overreact. The sentence told me she knew exactly what I had seen. What did you do? She sighed. We made some album decisions. You replaced me. That is an ugly way to phrase it. It is the accurate way. Wedding albums are about how a family wants to be remembered. I sat down slowly. There are sentences so cruel they do not need volume. They simply enter your body and close a door. How did you do it, Adrian? How? Macy photographed beautifully. The family shots felt more balanced with her. You were busy most of the day, and frankly, your energy in some photos was tired. My energy? You look stressed. I was working. You chose to be helpful. Nobody forced you. I almost laughed. Nobody forced you. The anthem of every family that benefits from the responsible daughter. Mom continued, Brenna deserves an album that feels joyful, not complicated. Did Brenna know? Silence. Mom, it was a group decision. That meant yes, and everyone would share guilt until no one owned it. Who is paying for these edits? Another silence. Then, we will discuss that later. I hung up. 2 minutes later, an email arrived from Noel Price. Subject, original gallery access and retouching authorization issue. Dear Adrian, I am sending the full unedited proof gallery to you as the original contract contact and payment authorizer. I also need to clarify the attached retouching request submitted under your name. The requested edits go beyond standard retouching and include person replacement, face compositing, body masking, and album reconstruction. The added retouching invoice is $18,450. Because several requests involve removing and replacing you specifically, I am not comfortable proceeding further without direct written confirmation from you. Please review the original gallery and the attached request thread. Noel. I stared at the email for a full minute. Then I clicked the gallery. 872 images, opened in a clean grid. There I was, in the getting ready room, buttoning Brenna's dress. There I was, kneeling to fix the hem. There I was, standing beside Dad under the live oak. There I was, holding Mom's elbow when she tripped slightly on the lawn. There I was, laughing with a flower girl. There I was, signing a vendor overtime slip. There I was, wiping frosting from a child's sleeve. There I was, exhausted at the edge of the dance floor, holding Brenna's bouquet while Macy posed for a selfie. The original gallery did not make me look perfect. It made me look present. And that was what they had tried to remove. I opened the retouching thread. The first email came from my mother's account, but the signature line said Adrian Cole. Noel, please proceed with family album cleanup. Remove Adrian from all primary family portraits and replace with Macy where appropriate. The family prefers Macy in the sister position for album consistency. Adrian approves. My hands went numb. My mother had not only erased me, she had pretended I approved it. Noel replied, Celia, since this is coming from your email but signed Adrian, I need confirmation from Adrian's contract email before proceeding with identity replacement edits. Mom responded, Adrian is traveling and asked me to handle. She knows she looked tired and does not mind. Please keep this discreet. The bride is sensitive. Then Brenna's email, Noel, just do what Mom says for the album. Adrian is not going to care as long as no one makes a thing of it. Then Macy, I am fine being added wherever needed. I know this family wants the final album to feel cohesive. Cohesive, my erasure had a vocabulary. Then the invoice, advanced retouching package, person removal and replacement across 76 selected images, additional album rebuild, rush fee, archival export, $18,450, bill to contract contact, Adrian Cole. I downloaded everything, not because I knew what I would do, because my hands knew before my heart did. I saved the original gallery. I saved the edited previews. I saved the email thread. I saved the invoice. I saved every payment receipt I had made. I saved the photo where Dad's hand still held the wrong shadow. Then I called Noel. She answered on the second ring. "Adrian," she said, and her voice told me she had been expecting this call. "You do the edits?" Some initial proofs were outsourced by request before I realized the scope was going toward full replacement. I stopped the full album process. I should have stopped earlier. I am sorry. Did they know I did not approve? Your mother insisted you did, but the request came from her account, not yours. That is why I sent you the originals. Why send them now? Noel was quiet for one beat. Because I photographed you standing there. I will not help someone pretend you weren't. That sentence undid me more than I expected. I had spent so long being visible only in labor that a professional stranger saying I photographed you standing there felt like a hand reaching through water. "Thank you," I said. "There is more," she said. I closed my eyes. "Of course there is. Your mother asked for the invoice to stay under your contract because she said you were covering final creative costs." No, I assumed no. Did they pay anything toward the retouching? $3,000 from your sister's card. It declined on the second installment. Of course it did. Noel continued, "I would like to resolve this cleanly. I can remove the unauthorized retouching from your account, but I need a written statement from you that you did not request or approve the identity replacement edits." My studio attorney also suggested a meeting because the album has already been shared publicly with edited images. A meeting. My family loved rooms when they thought they controlled the walls. "Invite them," I said. "Are you sure?" "No," I answered honestly. "But invite them." We scheduled it for Friday at Lumen and Lay Studio. By then, my mother had called 7 times. Brenna had texted twice. "Mom says you are spiraling. Please do not make this ugly." Then, the wedding was stressful for everyone. Macy sent nothing. Dad left one voicemail. "Adrian, I do not understand all this photo stuff. Your mother says you are upset about album choices. Call me." Album choices. That was what they had told him. Not forged approval. Not $18,450. Not replacing me with Macy in the family portraits. Album choices. I sent Dad one image, the original family portrait with me beside him, then the edited version with Macy in my place. I wrote, "Look at your hand." He called 30 seconds later. I did not answer. He texted, "I did not know." That may have been true. It was not enough. Friday morning, I printed everything. The contract, the payments, the email thread, the invoice, the original and edited images, a timeline. I placed them in a black museum archive folder, the kind we use for fragile photographs. That felt right. The truth deserved acid-free paper. Lumen and Lace Photography was in. A renovated building near the bay, with white brick walls, pale wood floors, framed wedding portraits, and shelves of sample albums. Noel had set up the meeting in her viewing room, where a large screen covered one wall and a long table sat in the center. When I arrived, my family was already there. My mother wore a cream blouse and the expression she used when preparing to be misunderstood. My father sat beside her, shoulders tense, eyes tired. Brenna wore sunglasses on her head and no makeup, which meant she wanted everyone to know she had been crying. Preston sat beside her, looking deeply uncomfortable. Maribel Vale sat at the far end, perfect as ever in navy linen. And Macy Rourke stood near the sample albums, arms folded, as if she had been invited to authenticate her own importance. Noel sat at the computer with a folder open. Her studio manager, Camille, sat near the wall with a laptop. A studio attorney joined by speakerphone. His name was Thomas Greer, but he only spoke twice. Mostly, he listened. My mother began before Noel could. "Adrian, I hope you understand that this has gotten completely out of proportion. I placed my folder on the table. I understand proportion very well. Macy sighed. Can we not be weird? It was a few photos. Noel looked at her. 76 selected images with person replacement requests. Macy's mouth closed. Brenna's face crumpled. I just wanted a beautiful album. I looked at my sister. You had one. Noel dimmed the lights. Let's begin with the contract issue, she said. Adrian is listed as contract contact and payment authorizer. Standard edits were included. Identity replacement and person substitution were not included and require explicit authorization. Mom said I was handling communication for the bride. Noel clicked. The email appeared on the screen. Remove Adrian from all primary family portraits and replace with Macy where appropriate. The family prefers Macy in the sister position for album consistency. Adrian approves. The room went silent. Dad leaned forward. Adrian approves. I looked at him. I did not write that. Mom's face tightened. It was shorthand. Forgery is often brief, Noel said. My mother looked at her sharply. Noel did not flinch. The attorney's voice came through the speakerphone. For clarity, the studio is not making a legal determination of forgery. We are stating the approval did not come from the authorized client email. A lawyer's way of saying the same thing with shoes on. Noel clicked again, the next email. Adrian is traveling and asked me to handle. She knows she looked tired and does not mind. Please keep this discreet. The bride is sensitive. Brenna whispered, Mom. Mom said, you were overwhelmed. I was protecting you. I laughed once, not loudly, not happily, protecting Brenna by erasing me under my own name. Mom turned to me. Do not dramatize this. Noel clicked to the first paired image. Original, Brenna in her dress. Me behind her, fastening buttons. Macy in the background, checking her phone. Edited. Macy behind Brenna, hands delicately near the buttons. I was gone. That was not a family portrait, Mom said. No, I said. That was labor. You replaced that too. Another image. Original. Me kneeling to fix Brenna's hem while Mom stood beside Macy. Edited. Macy kneeling, smiling upward. Another, original. Me beside Dad under the live oak, Dad's hand on my shoulder. Edited. Macy beside Dad, his hand still bent around the shape of my shoulder. Dad made a sound, not a word, a sound like something had broken quietly. Noel enlarged the hand. You can see the masking here, she said. The original contact point was not fully rebuilt. Maribel Vale spoke for the first time. That is Lionel's hand on Adrian. My mother's mouth pressed tight. Maribel, this is a family matter. Maribel looked at her. Then why was Macy in the family position? Macy flushed. I did not ask for all of this. I turned to her. You agreed to be added wherever needed. Her face changed. Noel clicked to the email. Macy, I am fine being added wherever needed. I know this family wants the final album to feel cohesive. Macy looked away. Brenna started crying. Preston put a hand on her back, but he was looking at the screen, not at her. Noel continued through the pairings. Me holding the bouquet. Replaced. Me with the emergency kit. Replaced. Me in the portrait with my parents and sister. Replaced. Me at the reception table, barely visible but present. Removed. Me standing behind the cake table while Brenna hugged Mom. Removed. Then the most painful one. Original, a candid during Dad's toast. I was standing near the edge of the dance floor, one hand over my mouth, crying. Dad was looking toward me. Brenna was looking down. Mom was looking at the camera. Edited. I was gone. The space filled with blurred flowers. Dad stared at it. I remember that, he said quietly. Mo. Em looked at him. He did not look away from the screen. I looked at Adrian because I said she kept this family steady. Brenna wiped her face. I forgot that part. You forgot, I said, because the album helped you. Noel opened the invoice next. Advanced retouching and replacement package, $18,450. Bill to Adrian Cole. Dad turned to Mom. You put this on her account, Mom said. She was already handling photography. That is not an answer. It was going to be sorted out. Like the deposit? I asked. Like the florist? Like the live painter? Like the $680 overtime fee at the reception? Maribel's eyes moved to Brenna. Preston sat straighter. What overtime fee? Brenna whispered. I did not know. I opened my folder. Here is the payment summary. Total paid by me toward wedding vendors, $23,430 after Dad's partial reimbursement. Total still unreimbursed, $13,430. Add the unauthorized retouching invoice, and the wedding wanted $31,880 from me while removing me from the album. The number landed, not because it was enormous compared with some wedding budgets, because it was exact. Exact numbers make denial work harder. Mom said, no one asked you to pay all that. I looked at her. Then why did everyone keep sending me invoices? Brenna covered her face. Dad whispered, Celia. My mother turned on him. Do not act innocent. You knew Adrian was helping. I did not know she was being erased. That sentence changed the room, maybe because Dad finally used the right word. Erased, not edited, not album choices. Erased. Mom's face hardened. The album should reflect Brenna's joy. Adrian looked miserable in half the photos. She looked tired, Noel said quietly, because she was working. Everyone looked at her. Noel did not apologize. I photograph weddings every weekend, she said. I know the difference between a guest and the person making sure the wedding does not fall apart. Adrian was working. Brenna sobbed then, not pretty crying, real crying. I didn't think of it like that. No, I said, you thought of how it would look. She nodded, because for once there was no better lie available. Macy picked up her purse. I don't think I should be here. No, Maribel said. I think you should. Macy froze. Maribel looked at her with the calm of old money meeting new embarrassment. You stood in a sister's place because the picture suited you. That may not be the same as planning it, but it is not nothing. Macy's eyes filled. I thought Adrian did not care about that stuff. I almost smiled. Because people who are always behind the camera do not want to be seen? She had no answer. Noel turned off the projector for a moment. The sudden blank screen felt like the room had inhaled. The studio will not charge Adrian for unauthorized identity replacement, Noel said. The initial outsourced proof costs already incurred will be absorbed by the studio while we determine responsibility. The final gallery will be reset to the original edited style without person replacement, unless all subjects provide proper releases. Mom's voice rose, but Brenna already shared some. Then Brenna can remove them, Noel said. Brenna whispered, I will. Mom stared at her. Brenna, my sister looked up. No, Mom, I will. That was the first time all morning she sounded like someone other than my mother's echo. Then Dad did something I did not expect. He stood, slowly as if age had arrived between one image and the next. He walked to the screen where Noel had brought back the original family portrait. Me, Dad, Mom, Brenna, under the live oak, his hand on my shoulder. He looked at the photo for a long time, then he said, This is the one I want. Mom whispered, Lionel, this is the one I want, he repeated. The room went still. He turned to me. I am sorry. My throat tightened. For what? He swallowed. For letting your mother decide where you belonged in our pictures, for letting you pay, for not noticing what it cost. Mom said, This is humiliating. Dad looked at her. No, this is what happened. That was the quietest rebellion I had ever seen from him, and maybe the bravest. I wanted it to fix everything. It did not. But one true sentence from a silent parent can feel like someone opening a window in a room you thought had no air. Brenna stood too. Her makeup was gone under her eyes. The polished bride had disappeared. In her place was my little sister, selfish and scared and maybe finally seeing the bill for being protected. I am sorry, she said. I did not answer immediately. She stepped closer. I knew Mom wanted Macy in more photos. I knew she thought the album looked better that way. I told myself you would not care because you never care about being front and center. But that's no. True, is it? No, I said. I cared, I just learned not to ask. She cried harder. I am sorry, I looked at her. You thanked me at the wedding. I meant it. Then let that version of you make the apology, not the bride, not Mom's daughter, you. She nodded, wiping her face. I am sorry I let you work all day, let Macy be called my sister of the heart, and then let Mom take you out of the pictures. I am sorry I treated your steadiness like it was not love because it did not photograph as pretty. That was better, not perfect. Better. Macy whispered, Adrian, I am sorry too. I looked at her. You are not my family. You do not owe me what they owed me. She flinched. But you did owe me the decency not to stand in a spot you knew had been taken from someone else. She nodded. You're right. Good. Let one room hold one clean answer. The meeting ended with practical decisions. The unauthorized retouching charges would not be billed to me. The edited replacement images would be removed from public client galleries. Brenna and Preston would receive the original gallery with standard color and exposure edits, no person replacement. A payment plan would be drafted for my unreimbursed vendor expenses. Dad insisted on signing it. Brenna insisted too. Mom said nothing. Maribel Vale requested a copy of the original family portrait for Preston's parents' album. My mother objected. Maribel looked at her and said, Celia, the truth is not less elegant because you dislike the angle. I liked her for the first time. After everyone left, I stayed behind with Noel. The viewing room was quiet now. The screen showed the original portrait under the oaks. Noel handed me a flash drive. Full originals for your records. I took it carefully. Thank you. I wish I had pushed harder earlier. You pushed when it mattered. She shook her head. I have photographed a lot of families. Sometimes the person being erased is the only one holding the day together. I looked at the image of myself beside Dad. My shoulders were tense. My hair was slightly loose. There was a wrinkle in my dress. I did not look like Macy. I did not look effortless. I looked tired, present, and real. I looked awful, I said. Noel smiled gently. No, you looked like a witness. That sentence stayed with me. The fallout was quieter than I expected. Brenna deleted the edited images from her social media that night. She posted one black square, then deleted that too. The next day, she posted the original family portrait with no caption except, my sister was there. Thank you, Adrian. It was not enough, but it was public. Sometimes public matters when the injury was public. Dad came to my apartment the following week with another check. Not all of it, $5,000. He sat at my kitchen table, the same place he had sat before the wedding with lemon bars, and looked at the framed photographs on my wall. I used to think you hid behind pictures, he said. I don't hide behind them. I know that now. He pushed the check toward me. I will send the rest monthly. Brenna is paying part. Preston too. Mom, he shook his head. Your mother says she needs time. I laughed once. Time for what? To stop being angry that people saw it. That was honest enough that I almost respected it. Dad looked tired. I failed you in the small ways for a long time, he said. That one hurt because it was so accurate. Not one catastrophic abandonment. Small failures. A lifetime of moving slightly aside so my mother could decide where I stood. Yes, I said. He nodded. No defense. No apology wrapped in explanation. Just the truth allowed to remain on the table. Brenna called 3 days later. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened. Adrian, I keep looking at the getting ready photos, the originals. There is one where you are buttoning my dress and I am looking at myself in the mirror. I did not even turn around. I hate that photo, not because of how I look, because of how you look. Like you already knew where you stood. She paused. I do not know how to be your sister without needing something. I want to learn. I am sorry. I saved the voicemail. I did not call back that day, or the next. On the third day, I sent her one photo. It was from the original gallery. A candid Noel had captured late in the reception. Brenna and I were standing near the back hallway. She was crying into my shoulder and I was holding her with one hand while holding the emergency binder in the other. I wrote, start here. This happened too. She replied, I forgot. I wrote, I didn't. Months have passed since the album meeting. The payment plan is slow but active. Dad sends checks. Brenna sends smaller transfers labeled reimbursement, not gift. That word matters. Preston apologized once in person for not asking more questions. I believed him halfway, which was enough. Macy mailed a note on thick cream stationery. It was short. I liked being chosen and did nada. Esque what it cost you. I am sorry. I put it in a folder labeled people who almost understood. My mother has not apologized. She sent one text after Brenna's corrected gallery went live. I hope you are happy now that everyone thinks I am a monster. I did not answer. Because my mother has always thought the worst part of harm is being seen causing it. I no longer agree. The corrected wedding album arrived in a linen box 2 months later. Brenna asked if she could bring it to my apartment. I said yes, but only with Dad, not Mom. We sat at my table. Brenna opened the box like it might bite her. The first page showed the venue. Second page, the dress. Third, the getting ready room. There I was, buttoning the gown. Not flattering, not perfect. Present. Brenna touched the page. I almost removed the evidence of who helped me into my dress, she said. Yes. She looked at me. Do you hate me? No. Do you forgive me? Not all the way. She nodded. That is fair. Dad sat quietly, but when the family portrait appeared, he put his hand over his mouth. The corrected image was beautiful, not magazine beautiful. Better, Brenna in ivory, Mom in pale blue, Dad with his hand on my shoulder. Me in navy, standing slightly stiffly because I still did not know whether I was allowed to relax. The live oak behind us, light coming through leaves, the family as it was, complicated, uneven, real. Dad asked if he could have a copy. I said yes. He framed it and hung it in his office at the marine repair shop. Not in the hallway at home, where Mom could move it. In his office, above the desk where customers drop off invoices. The first time I saw it there, I cried in my car afterward. Not because everything was healed, because something had been placed where it could not be easily edited. As for my work, I think differently now when people bring in old photos and say, this is everyone who mattered. Sometimes I ask, who took the picture? They usually pause, because there is always someone behind the camera. The aunt who cooked, the sister who paid, the daughter who drove, the cousin who held the baby, the person who made the day possible and somehow never made the album. I scan those images more carefully now. I look at reflections in windows, shadows on walls, hands at the edge of frames. I look for the people history tried to crop out. Maybe that is why the museum feels more personal lately. Or maybe I finally understand that preservation is not about keeping pretty things. It is about refusing to let the useful people disappear. My family replaced me in every wedding photo. Then the photographer sent the original gallery. 872 images that said, she was there, she paid, she helped, she stood beside her father, she held the dress, she carried the flowers, she existed before anyone decided the album looked better without her. That is my story. If you have ever been used behind the scenes and erased when it was time for the picture, tell me what you would have done. Would you have stayed quiet, called it out, or projected the originals on the wall? Share this with someone who needs proof that being edited out does not mean you were never there. Subscribe to Hush and Tell Stories for more stories about family betrayal, quiet strength, painful truth, and the moment the original finally replaces the lie. I will see you in the next one.